The Star Trek franchise has amassed 902 episodes of television spanning 47 seasons. As time has passed, I thought to myself, it would be extremely interesting to rank every episode, but randomly, thus creating the Star Trek Retro Review series, a weekly back and forth between Pop Tot and I, as we reminisce over the good, the bad, and the ugly. Buckle up and enjoy. To start off our wonderful retro review journey of all 809,007,000 episodes of Star Trek, I picked TNG's Rascals.
This feels wrong somehow.
Pop Tot, you watched it with me. What did you think?
It's funny because I don't know that I've necessarily watched this episode in a very long time. When I was going through TNG, I tend to skip this episode because when it first came out, it was not one of my favorite episodes. And there's one scene in it that everybody gravitates to, and that's the awkward scene between Miles and Keiko. And you know, obviously anybody's watching this probably knows what Rascals is about. Is some of the main characters go through a transporter mishap. They end up 11 or 12 years old.
According to the bioscans, their DNA structure is now consistent with those of pre-adolescence.
There's a lot of issues with it because Star Trek always tends to lean towards science fiction.
Yeah.
This was more science fantasy because they even made up some terms like RVN that doesn't exist.
Unlike DNA, which never changes, RVN takes on some additional viroxic sequences during adolescence.
The Miles Keiko thing was probably the best scene, but it was still so cringy awkward.
But this feels wrong somehow.
Miles Edward O'Brien, I am still your wife.
You are under arrest.
That surprisingly reminded me a lot of what they did with The Professional, which I just watched not too long ago.
Bring me everyone. What do you mean everyone?
Everyone! How do you counterbalance the relationship with his wife that's now a child? And I think they mostly did it well. Like, obviously, right. Miles was like, very uncomfortable by it, as was I. I think the interesting part of this episode for me is it almost feels like two episodes shoved into one. First one being this transporter accident that creates, children from our main characters and some side characters. And then the ridiculously goofy Home Alone aspect that comes with the Ferengi, which creates a whole lot of different issues.
It doesn't make any sense, sir. Why?
And I think that's why this episode was not well loved. You have the Enterprise D, which is a flagship of the Federation, and you have, as Riker said,
how many people on your ship?
1,014.
And they were basically taken over by 5 Ferengi. The 2 bird of prey wounded down the shields. They got on board. These 5 Ferengi were able to herd all the adults down on the planet. For some reason, kept the kids, which, as you know, created the Home Alone thing. Then the writers went on to say, okay, well, these guys were able to do this, but now they're dumbasses, and these kids are going to be able to take the ship back.
Right. And then, I always get a kick because Worf is portrayed as the badass, and then he immediately gets his ass kicked, and he's like unconscious for like half the episode. And then the Ferengi did all this creativity and basically had the Enterprise fall into this trap because the Enterprise was answering the call of these miners or whatever. And then they just become very stupid. The guy follows the little remote RC car thing down the hallway, and it's just, they fell for the stupid, Riker's my dad thing. And it was just like, these guys are morons. Like, how did you guys take over the ship?
Dad!
I mean, you got some of the brightest minds. Think about all the things, because we're talking about season 6 here. Yeah. All the things that this crew has been together. They've outsmarted Q, but they managed to not outsmart 5 or 6 or half dozen, whatever, Ferengi. Like you said, it's definitely 2 episodes crammed together. There is the cringy moments with Picard pretending to be Riker's son.
I think they really should have just not had the Ferengi in there. They picked, I think, the right characters to do it.
Right.
Picard, probably one of the older people on the Enterprise, kind of going back, and then it creates this kind of doubt about Picard's future that's never there.
I've spent 30 years of my life aboard starships. I'm not about to sit behind a desk now.
Ro, who had a very traumatizing childhood. You have Guinan, who is, centuries old. Kiko, who's a married woman and who has a child. So it's very interesting. I'm like, there's a lot of things there that you could do things with.
In a way, you're very lucky. You might have a chance to do what most people can only dream about.
They just don't do it.
An unmitigated disaster.
And I think that the core of the child thing wasn't even Picard. It was Ro and Guinan having Ro find her childhood.
This isn't some kind of glorious second childhood, Guinan.
The fan theory is you don't see Ro again until almost mid or towards the end of season 7, is that she opted to stay as a child during that time.
I most certainly did not.
Oh, that'd be kind of cool.
And I'm like, that would have been cool if she's like, at the end decided, I want to stay this way for a while.
I think the other thing I was a big fan of was the performances by the children.
It's just so ridiculous. I can't take myself seriously like this.
The one that plays Picard, I think his last name's Birkin. He's the one that also plays Renee in the episode where Picard goes home from Best of Both Worlds.
Right.
He has that tussle with his brother.
I tried so hard. I wasn't strong enough. I wasn't good enough.
But I thought they all did really good. The little girl that plays Guinan, she had that tone, that cadence down.
Well, that's the wonderful thing about crayons. They can take you to more places than a starship.
You were a jumper, all right. The quiet ones. They always look so innocent.
I actually thought it worked really well, and I thought there was some kind of interesting commentary, especially with how the crew reacted. Like, okay, this is Picard, but not really. And then you had a really touching scene between Picard and Beverly where she was like,
You are still Jean-Luc Picard. What do you think you should do?
When they're on the bridge, young Picard is telling Worf,
Prepare to launch a Class 4 probe to study the energy field.
Worf's just kind of standing, and you see Riker standing behind
give the little
Picard.
head nod.
Riker gives him the head nod, like,
Yep.
Yeah, go ahead and do it. It was like, yeah, that's pretty cool.
Probe. Aye, sir.
The other thing I loved, and this is just in a production level, the new ones definitely do better, but the thing that I loved was when they had that issue in the shuttle the first time, the 4 of them, and you see everybody bouncing around, and it's just literally the actors just bouncing around. And if you notice, everybody's bouncing around in like a different way.
Yeah.
It's like they're not even bouncing in the same area. They're just like Patrick Stewart's going this way and Whoopi Goldberg's going another way. And it's like, oh, okay, that's fine.
An unmitigated disaster.
Overall, our first episode of Retro Review, going back through Star Trek, what would you rate Rascals?
I'd say I'd give it a 6. I did love the pacing, and I do love just nostalgia. Next Generation, we're talking about this is like early 90s. They're lovable characters. Like you said, the child actors did an amazing job.
Commander Riker, please take command of the ship until further notice.
Understood.
It just, there's some goofiness in there, and it's like, come on, there's no way that this flagship's gonna fall. That many people, you got all 1,000 people. I don't know. It just, so I'll take points off for that, and the way the goofiness in which they took over that ship.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna go with a 6 too. I think it's important to remember and remind yourself that even though 6 seems low, I would think 5 is kind of average, and there's a lot of really good episodes of Star Trek, so 6 not being bad, but I definitely agree with you. I think the first part of the episode has some really kind of compelling ideas that they never execute, maybe having a second life and redoing stuff, which they kind of tease with Picard. Maybe he can go and do something different with his life than be a captain.
But there are some people who would find it difficult to accept a 12-year-old captain.
Then it all becomes silly, Home Alone, the Ferengi being stupid, and I'm so glad that Deep Space Nine changed the Ferengi, because it's so hard to take them serious as bad guys, and then they eventually just kind of like, oh yeah, they're just kind of like greedy merchants, which they are here, but they're just not good bad guys at all.
Unless you release the computer to our control, I will execute every child on this ship.
You're absolutely useless. Hey,
scum.
I'm sorry, kid. Why don't you look what you're doing? I said I'm sorry, so shut up.
Please let us know what you guys thought of this and what episodes are you guys looking forward to us reviewing. There's so many episodes to go through, and next week is Pop Talk's choice, which we won't give away right now, but be sure to let us know, and we'll see you guys on the next one.